What's up, guys? Today we have Nick Fuentes on the Tommy G's podcast exposing the truth about JD Vance.
We're in the business of power. There's no getting away from the fact that we are going to be the authority in the world. But the question is the means. Are we more benevolent than other great powers throughout history? Like a Joseph Stalin, like, some of the great tyrants of history.
Tyrants of history.
By great, I mean the most powerful, those with the greatest empires. Great is not a synonym for good. You know that, right?
Well, it could be the most impressive. I mean, I see what you're saying, but I just think it's a funny word choice given your admiration of Stalin.
Great. Okay. Great is about magnitude. To say something is great means it's large, it's vast. So a great dictator meaning someone with power. Awesome even. Awesome means awe-inspiring. It's big.
So do you think Trump will be able to, because some say that he's a populist, do you think he'll be able to correct this ship in time to set up the Republicans for a win in 2028? Or do you think this ship is too far off course that it's going to be a big sweep going forward for the next few years?
I think that Republicans are in a lot of trouble for 28 because with Trump off the ballot, who do they have? Rubio, Vance, are these people that are going to be able to mobilize the coalition that Trump did? I think that Trump had kind of like a unique effect. He's charismatic. He's a known quantity. You know what you're getting with him. He also, I think, a lot of the conventional rules don't apply to him. Like he's promising mass deportations, but he gets a record number of Hispanics to vote for him. I think that's uniquely something that Trump was able to tap into. Will a Rubio or a Vance be able to inspire people? Will they be able to connect people in the same way? They're much more conventional politicians. I think there's a problem with Trump off the ballot, just for openers. But beyond that, I think there's a real problem with how Trump has been governing. If things keep going the way they are, if the economy doesn't get much better, if we're still in the war in Ukraine in a few years, if we're responsible for more devastation in Gaza, I don't know that Republicans are going to be able to make a case that people are better off 4 years after Trump. So I think they're going to, obviously there's a lot of game left. We're only a year in, not even to the Trump administration. But if it keeps going like this, they're going to have problems.
What do you make of JD Vance from his origin story to where he is now? How would you break him down?
Well, I think he's a fraud. I think he's a political creation. Everything about him is fake. His whole story, his private sector career, it's all fake.
Break it down.
So he comes from Ohio, and he has this story that he's this, he is the epitome of the white working class that was left behind by globalization, victim of addiction in his family, and all that sort of thing, which is fine.
You think that was a real part of his story?
That's a real part of his story. That's authentic.
So the Hillbilly Elegy, real book.
There is some, I think they exaggerate how poor he was, because realistically, later in his life, he was sort of like upper middle class. He wasn't exactly destitute throughout his childhood, let's put it that way. But then you start to get problems when he goes into the Marines. They say he's a Marine. Do people know that he was writing press releases in the Marines? I feel like people think he's a combat veteran, like he was out there fighting. And it reminds me of Pete Buttigieg. Did he go into the military to fight for his country, or was that a way to position himself? And people don't like when people talk like this, but this is a facet of politics, that service is used as a springboard into a political career, if that's what you're into. And so someone like a Pete Buttigieg, who I think is very similar in that regard, sort of like a political striver, extremely ambitious, maybe sociopathic, a guy like that goes in the military because they want to be the president. Vance becomes a Marine writing press releases because he wants to be the president. He goes to Yale Law School. And when he's there, he gets mentored by David Frum, who's a speechwriter for George W. Bush. He's a neocon. David Frum coined the phrase axis of evil. He came up with this. Iran, Iraq, North Korea. He's one of the architects of this welfare warfare state that started after the global war on terror. So he gets mentored by David Frum. Then he gets mentored by Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel at this time is a...
How did they meet?
So Peter Thiel did a speech at Yale University where JD Vance was there for law school. And JD Vance came up to him after the speech. They exchanged information, and they carried on a correspondence over email. And Vance said this is the most important moment in his life, meeting Peter Thiel. He said that was the deciding point. That was the decisive moment. And so Vance finishes law school, and under the tutelage of Peter Thiel, he writes this book, Hillbilly Elegy. He goes out to Silicon Valley and he works a bunch of no-show jobs in a series of venture capital firms. And everybody that he works for says, we never saw him in the office. We don't know exactly what he even did.
So it was just, he was put on payroll to have a resume builder.
Yes, he was put on the payroll at Peter Thiel's venture capital firm, Mithril. And the people there said, we never saw him in the office. We don't know what he actually did. And
what did he do you think?
He was promoting his book. While he was working at Mithril, he was on his book tour in 2016. He was going to the Aspen Institute. He was making his Netflix series. He was a contributor on CNN. He was given a job, put on the payroll, as billionaires do, given that kind of patronage so that he could start to build this political career. And so he's building this resume as a Marine, as a venture capitalist. And by the way, what is Mithril? It's a VC firm. What does VC specialize in? High-risk startups, tech startups in Silicon Valley. And maybe that doesn't mean anything to people, but that is where the money is. The biggest movers in the stock market are the tech companies. It's Amazon, Microsoft, Netflix, Apple, NVIDIA. These are the big companies. So if you're JD Vance working for Thiel, who's a tech mogul from PayPal Mafia, it's not just any no-show job. You're ingratiating yourself with the next billionaire class. Because wherever the industry is, that's where the money is. Where the money is, politics soon follows. Because whoever builds the billionaire fortune, they then build their lobbying empire. They then capture the regulatory state, the government. So he's at Mithril promoting his book, and the basis of the book is, I'm the Trump whisperer. Why are the white people angry? Why are the white people going for Trump? I can explain it. I can translate for them to the New York Times. You know, the New York Times looks at them as hillbillies. You know, they're knuckle-dragging primitives. They're racist. They're coarse. They're illiterate. And Vance comes and says, I went to Yale. I was one of them, but I went to Yale. And I can speak their language. And here's what they're really saying. So in other words, he's put in politics to mediate between the pitchforks and torches, the rubes, the peasants, and the elites. And he's basically there to deliver the rubes back into the system. He's there to go to the New York Times and say, this is why they're angry. And he's going to go to the peasants and say, I'm one of you. Trust me, I'll fix it. But in the meantime, he's at Mithril shaking hands with all of the future Palantir, Anduril, all the future SpaceX, Tesla people that are going to be running the government. And so this is his venture capital career. This is in the mid to late 2010s where he's doing this. And the big problem for him, of course, is that Trump wins the election. Why is this a problem? Because the whole conceit of Vance's book and everything is he's trying to get all the peasants to calm down. He's trying to tell them, you can't blame all your problems on immigrants. You can't blame all your problems on China. You're the problem. You're not working hard enough. If you're addicted to drugs, if your town got destroyed because the factory left, if you're poor, it's because you're not working hard enough. It's because you're making excuses. You're a loser. That's the basis of the book. And so he's supposed to steer them into a conservatism that says, we're still going to keep free trade. We're still going to keep mass immigration. We're still going to do the supply side economics. You need to get smarter. So he was meant to basically steer the angry white people away from populism and back into elitism. That was the goal. But Trump wins on the basis of all those things he was trying to steer them away from. Because Trump says, no, NAFTA took the jobs. Free trade took the jobs. Illegal immigration did take the jobs. That's what it is. It's cheap labor. The drugs are pouring in because the government is letting them do that. And so Vance then has to go and rework his strategy. So they hold a meeting in January 2017 after the inauguration. And by they, I mean JD Vance, David Frum, his old mentor, all of his political connections. They hold a meeting and they say, well, what are we going to do now? How can I become the president if I spent the past year attacking Trump as Hitler and a Nazi and basically counter-signaling that message? How am I going to endear the people to me for my run? And so for a couple of years, they say, well, maybe Trump will fail. So Vance keeps calling him a Nazi, keeps attacking him, says maybe Trump is a flash in the pan. They realize Trump isn't going away. And so from roughly 2020 until 2022, they engage in rehabilitation. Vance moves back to Ohio. He gets an apology with Trump in Mar-a-Lago, and he starts to rebrand himself as a nationalist. And all of a sudden starts saying, you know what? I was wrong. Trump was right. Trump is the man. He's not a Nazi. He's a great guy. He starts going to the National Conservatism Conference, and he starts to basically take Trump's message and adopts all of it as his own and starts to put in some of the features that Peter Thiel wants, that some of the donors want. And that's basically a short history of how you go from Vance as this guy from Appalachia through the no-show jobs in venture capital under the tutelage of Thiel and Frum to now he's supposed to be the heir apparent of MAGA, pushing the Trump message. That's why I say the whole thing is fake.
I mean, he seemed like a pretty obvious industry plant that he's been groomed from the beginning. And I think he's mastered the political ability to answer a question without saying anything. I saw at the TP USA event, the kids were asking all the right questions to him. And which is really encouraging to see that the young people were not skipping a beat. They knew exactly what they needed to go after. And the way he would talk circles with his answers, he just seems like a total puppet, and it almost seems like he'll say anything to be in power.
Well, and who really is he? When he was against Trump in 2016, this is a grown man. It's not like he was a kid. He's a grown man. And he said with conviction, Trump is literally him. Trump is literally a Nazi. 2 years later, now you're his number one cheerleader, so what changed? And it's obvious. He realized that Trump has staying power. He realized that he's going to need Trump's endorsement to become the senator from Ohio. And somebody like that, I just don't trust. I don't think he sincerely changed his views. I think, like you said, he'll say anything that he needs to say to get power. And when he thought never Trump was the future, he was a never Trumper. When he thought that kissing Trump's ass was the future, he's kissing Trump's ass. So someone like that, even if they say the right things, you can't believe what they say.
Yeah, honestly, guys, I didn't know much about JD Vance, but I never liked him because, let's be honest, he's a Catholic, he's a white Catholic, and he married an Indian woman whose religion is Hinduism. So this is not a really Christian nationalist thing to do. And he had kids with her, she never converted to Christianity. So it's a shame. And now, thanks to Nick, knowing JD Vance's background is definitely a plant. But guys, let me know in the comments what you think, if you agree or disagree. Leave a like if you want to. Christ is King, and God bless.